Hey there, welcome to Contracts and Chaos. My name's Alyssa.
And I'm Brenna, and we're here to tell you that you are not alone in the mayhem of this real estate industry.
We're keeping it real and sharing our stories, strategies, and successes in today's real estate world.
So come join us every Tuesday while we talk contracts and chaos. We live on color-coded sticky notes these days.
Emily,
But
podcast.
today we are going to talk about 10 questions that you should ask your home inspector. And this was actually provided by a home inspection company, which is kind of cool to see what they suggest that you ask about, because probably they get a lot of phone calls, is my guess.
I'm sure,
Hey,
guaranteed.
had a question. So if they're just like, just ask the question at that last like 15 or 20 minute walkthrough, I think that's a good idea. This could be something that, you send out to your buyers as they're preparing for a home inspection. Here are some questions you might want to think about when we meet with him or her at the end of the inspection.
Well, and some of these I think even are things that you need to ask your sellers too to prep for a listing. Because, or for buyers, even when you go to a showing, like one of them, the first one, and we'll go over it in a second, I went to a listing appointment yesterday. She has no idea where hers is and she needs to remodel a bathroom. And I was like, oh, we better find that. So I think these, yes, they're great at an inspection, but these questions could also be answered at different points depending on the needs of your client, to make sure like,
Yep. And same thing, like talking like first time home buyers and things. There's items on here that they're like, oh, I have to change my air filter.
right?
What?
Or my listing, the home inspection
What's
brought up,
that?
they've never changed the water filter. And I was like, guys, crawl under your house and change that. That's nasty. Like, go change that.
Pay somebody to do
Right?
it, you know?
Right.
All right. Okay, we got 10.
All right.
You want to go? You take the first one. Take us
So
away.
the first one is definitely important. You see this come up in new construction. When you do your new construction walkthrough, the construction manager will always say, okay, here's the one under the sink, here's the one at the washer dryer. In the garage, here's the one for the whole house, and here's the one for the faucets outside. In the winter, you need to turn off the one for the faucets outside. If you get the wrong one, just flip-flop them. Not a big deal. It is the water main shut off, or the main water shut off. You need to know where that is, because if you come home and you have a tub overflowing for some reason, or a water line, my parents had the feed line on the back of their toilet burst, and it got them a whole house remodel. Not that they wanted one, but you need to go through that, know where it is, so you can very quickly turn off all the water in your house. Or maybe it's the sink, and you just want to, do you have one under your sink? Ask where that is so you know. Or maybe, let's not talk about emergencies. Maybe you just want to change the sink out or the faucet and you want to upgrade things. You got to be able to turn your water off, because water is going to do a ton of damage if you don't get it turned off quickly.
Yeah, I had a client. It's my sister. It's my sister. She is a client. Like, she bought the house with me, but she was like, "Hey, there's water dripping into the laundry room," and I was like, "From the ceiling?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Bro, your bathroom is directly above your laundry room." And she's like, "Oh, it's from the bathroom." And I was like, "You need to shut the water off." And she's like, "Where?" And I'm like, "Ma'am, we talked about this." Because it is important, especially with things like water does so much damage so quickly. If you were just like, oh, well, I'll call a company and just wait for them to come turn it off when they get here, that is, especially here in North Carolina where the humidity levels are so high, you are just asking for huge, huge problems down the road. So yes, number one should be,
yes,
where is the main water shut off? Where are all the water shut offs? Because I think that that's super important too. And a lot of older homes don't have that many, but like you said, like the newer construction, you've got some under the sink, you've got them at the washer and dryer. Like, they're very specific that you can turn off, which is great.
Yeah. And if you want to know how quickly water can do damage, one feeder line in my parents' house for less than 16 hours, because we timed when I left and when they got home. The original quote to remodel their entire house was $300,000. They were out of their house for over a year, and I never asked what the final number was. One line destroyed there's literally a cloud formed in their kitchen because I had turned the heat on so it would be warm when they got home. And the toilet on the third floor flooded their entire house, and it was raining from a cloud in their kitchen.
Oh no.
So yeah,
no.
one, make sure you
Oh
know where the water
no.
shut off is. Two, make sure you're well
Hmm.
insured. Very well
Yeah,
insured.
absolutely. That for sure. The next one on this list is where, well, number two and number three are kind of the same thing. Where are the GFCI outlets located? What do they do and how to reset them? You'd think that this should be pretty self-explanatory,
Right?
but listen, there are some people genuinely don't know, and they're great questions to ask of what is the purpose behind this, along with number three, AFCIs, which a lot of people have no idea what an AFCI is, and I think I probably only know because of my husband and my brother's an electrical engineer.
Right.
You know, those are ones that are actually located in your breaker box, and trip when there's something within your electrical system.
And
But those are great questions to ask and have them like point those out to you so you know.
and just because you have something plugged into it and when you push the button it turns off does not mean that outlet is tripping properly. Get that I learned
Correct.
this because it came up in a home inspection. My client was like, "Look at this, the light turns off," and I was like, "Hold on, get one of those testers, carry it with you. They're not that expensive. That's a quick
Hmm.
way, like especially even before a home inspection, if you're getting a house ready to list, check those for your clients because if it's gonna come up on a home inspection, swap them out. Get it done ahead of
Yeah.
time so it's not a hurdle down the road. It's not something you have to negotiate later.
And that's something that I check at the final walkthroughs too.
Yes.
The one of the last final walkthroughs that we did, there were two upstairs that were not working, and they were replacing them. So
Yep.
it was good, but they wouldn't have known that until they went upstairs to use the bonus room, God knows when, and they'd be like, "Oh, who knows when this could have happened?" But they weren't working at the final walkthrough, so we were able to get those swapped out really quickly.
Nice. Good job. I bought a laser measure the other day and I knew I was forgetting something at Lowe's and it was that I wanted to get a new one of those for my car.
I love the laser measure too. Do you have the one that does like you can do? It'll calculate square footage.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe I need to go exchange it before I open it. I just got
Ooh,
one.
I'll send you a picture of
Yeah,
mine.
do that,
Because
please.
you can just measure like distance, or there's a setting on it that it shows like a little square, and you do one side of the room to the other, and then you go to the other wall and measure across, and it'll calculate the square
Do
footage
you
for you.
measure your own square footage for your listings? Yeah,
No, I used to. The photographer, we're getting off topic
that's
again.
okay.
The photographer that I use actually does the like the Matterport
Mm-hmm.
tours. That is a laser measure, but it does like the digital printout of it, and it's really nice. And it's a lot of work to measure your own listings. And when you start getting into like little closets and extra bonus space, it's just a lot.
Agreed.
So
Agreed. Yeah, I
I
don't
I don't trust my math that much.
exactly.
So
So number four, which is kind of number three because we combine the GFCIs and the AFCIs, is how many thermostats does this have? Does this house have? Some houses may have two zones in one unit. Some may have two units. The house we
hmm
wrote an offer on last week had two systems. Like upstairs was one system, downstairs was another system because the square footage was big enough. So you
yep.
need to know like how many and where are they located, and um, is it hardwired? Does it have its own electrical system? Some are one wire, some are two wire. Mine has batteries even though it's hardwired. Like, how does it
That's
operate?
funny.
I know mine's screwy. I gotta get a different
Yep.
one. Um,
That's weird.
yeah, right. And if you lose heat, check your fuse box first because I had a very expensive heat repair bill once, and it was a fuse. Because it didn't
Really? Oh,
look
that's
like it had
terrible.
tripped. I mean, it was a smidge, and I had no heat for 5 days. And if I had just
Oh, that's terrible.
thankfully I have a fireplace, so we were good. But yes, check your
Hmm.
breakers. Um, but yeah, know where those
No,
thermostats are.
number five is, I think we have a few of them that kind of go along with the
Mm-hmm.
HVAC. Ooh, these are like the big ticket things that people don't really think about, but
Right.
are very important in day to day life. Where are the return air registers and air filters? The reason that the air return registers are important is because I go in sometimes to like list houses and I'm like, you have your couch stuffed directly up against this return. Like your HVAC is having to work so hard
Mm-hmm.
to pull air. And sometimes they're wonky. You've got returns that are in the ceiling.
That's where mine
Mine
is.
are in the walls. A ceiling, I would love ceilings. It's out
Mm-hmm.
out of the way, sure. The wall ones are hard. Sometimes there are returns in the floor. So, and depending on the size of the returns, like I have some massive air returns, but they can look kind of like a register where the air comes out of. So it's a good thing to ask that too. But that's where you're going to be swapping out air filters, which is, I think, the next question.
And is that the next one? Okay.
I
All
think
right.
so.
So, yes, the next one is what size are the air filters and how often should you change them? So, also on that location, my best friend's he has to go under his house in his crawl space to change his air filter.
Hmm.
When I inherit that house, the first thing I'm doing is having an HVAC company come in and change that because this girl is not climbing under the house once a month. Um,
Hmm.
I personally, mine are like the little thin ones. I was getting like the fancy filters, and my HVAC couldn't keep up. And so they were like, just get the cheap ones and change them every month because you have pets. And I was like, done. So
Yep.
know where they are. A lot of times they're in the south. They're up in your attic space. And with the new systems, they're like this big block of filter and make sure you know how often, how that unit works. And this may be something that your home inspector's like, hey, not my specialty, call an HVAC company, which is fine because we should probably get those
Hmm.
systems inspected too. Um,
Absolutely.
but ask them, like, how often do I have to change this? How do I change it? What size? Is there a special type I need to get? Um, because if you get the wrong filter or too heavy of a filter, just like that couch over the return air, it's going to make your unit work harder. And that,
Which is going to kill your
right.
unit. It's definitely worth the $3 filter versus your, $7,000
Yes.
unit
And that's what I
outside.
do.
And 7,000's on the cheap
Right.
side.
7,000 is wicked cheap. I just
It's wicked
once a
cheap.
month I jump on a stool, flip my filter out, put a new one, and you'd be amazed, even in just a month, how icky that thing is. Ugh.
Hmm.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, we do ours every two because we have two big returns, one in the living room, one down by the door. And they're like big, like 24 by
Oh yeah, that's
32 is the
big.
filter that we put in these things. So they're massive. So we do it every 2 to 3 months. They said every quarter, but we have pets. So that's the
Yeah.
other thing too, just like with the hair and the dust and all of that
Mm-hmm.
stuff.
Well,
So,
between pets and my
um,
allergies, we're cleaning that once a month. It's done. I just like
oh
the
yeah.
first of the month, I clean the washing machine, I clean the dishwasher, I change my air filters. Like, and then it used to be the pets got their flea and tick, but that got bumped to the 15th because we just,
Oh, so you got a middle of the month to do
yeah,
list
in the
too.
middle of the month. Can't do it all on one
I
day. Oof.
Number 7 on here is the home equipped with carbon monoxide detectors? If so, where are they located? Now this is starting to get tied in with the smoke detectors too for lending purposes, and they'll mark if they don't see any carbon monoxide detectors as well. So that's a big thing to do. It's another one to know if they are battery operated or hardwired in.
Yes, mine are both. Mine are both.
Your house is
I
weird.
know. Mine are all linked together. It's annoying. 'Cause- and then
So when one battery's low, they all chirp.
no, thankfully that doesn't work. That doesn't happen. But if one goes
Oh, good.
off, they all go off. So they're linked that way. But they also
Hmm.
put the wrong type in my kitchen. So it senses heat before it senses um smoke or something like that.
Hmm.
Literally, and I'm not a bad cook. Every time I use my oven and I clean the thing regularly, my smoke detector goes off. I'm like I open the oven door
That's
and the heat
terrible.
comes out, and it's something where like it senses a drastic sudden change in temperature and it sets everything. I'm like,
Hmm.
so annoying. But yes, make sure. And when you guys change your clocks, change your batteries. Or when the clock's forward and backwards, change the batteries. Even if it's not chirping at you, wouldn't you rather just change it and be safe just in case?
Well, it's just easier too to like tie it to something like
Yes.
that. Like, oh, clocks are going back. We're doing this because as a human species, it's just easier to stack those
Yes.
things. Like, oh, this is when we do this. If you're just like, hey, try to remember to change your batteries every 6 months, it's never going to
No.
happen, folks.
And that's kind of like I don't
That's a
we
good
haven't
tip.
reviewed Atomic Habits on here, but that's what he tells you to do is stack your habits. One thing
Hmm.
triggers another thing. So that's an atomic habit that was drilled into our brain in kindergarten. But yeah, VA will ding you for no smoke detectors. I just had a listing that closed a couple months ago, and one of the things was it doesn't have smoke detectors. And we said, and CO detectors. I found a 5-pack on Amazon for like $25. I said, I got you.
Mm-hmm.
That's your closing gift. Like,
Yep. I've had FHA and USDA for like buyers that I have offers out on, and that's something. And as an agent too, like you can notice things when you're walking through and be like, hey, I haven't seen a single smoke detector in this house. When we're walking through, this is going to come up, you know. And it's just one of those things like, oh wow, I didn't even notice, because regular people that don't walk through 500 houses regularly
yes.
don't notice that there is no smoke detector, because it's not something that they're trained to pick up on. So, but those are, and they're cheap, you know, they're quick
they're
fixes,
not,
honestly. Just,
they're easy.
and that's, we'll talk about that next week too, about things that you can do to prepare
Yes, for a home inspection.
for your home inspection.
So this episode is for agents and clients. So agents, if you're like, hey, my client is having a hard time, let's send them this episode. Like sometimes like your husband needs to think it was his idea, right? Send it. Let us be the mean people. The other one is a fireplace with gas logs installed. So like, especially was it a wood fireplace at one point, and then they switched it to gas? Was that chimney converted? Because that's a big thing. Is the chimney stacked and sealed correctly? I just went through this on a listing. How does the fireplace work? Like Brenna said, make sure the pilot light is lit. Otherwise, you're going to have to get a fireplace inspector out here now, because a home inspector won't light the pilot.
Yep. And if they're vented or not vented, because that makes a difference too. Vented, meaning it's mostly just for pretty. Not vented, you're going to actually get heat out into the room from there too. Yeah, just little thing. Oh, and another thing with the fireplace, how does it work?
Yeah, especially if it's wood burning. Do you know how to operate a
Well,
flue?
wood burning, but there are, gosh, the last 3 fireplaces I've had, there was a switch in the kitchen to turn on the living room fireplace. Some of them have remotes.
Were they like,
some of,
was
you
it
know,
like
there's
open
just different
floor
things.
plan for that kitchen switch like that?
Well, no, I mean, it wasn't like down the hall and around the corner, but it wasn't where you would expect it to be.
Mine has a remote. Actually, I need to call the fireplace guy and have the remote box stopped working. So I can light mine manually and like go over and flip the switch. But because the remote box isn't working, that's now. So I actually, yes, because that's my favorite thing in the winter.
It's your fireplace. That's one thing that I miss from being in up north. Like we had a true like wood burning fireplace, and before we had kids, Travis and I would flip because our couch would face the TV normally, and the fireplace was behind us, and we would like flip the the couch around so we could sit by the fire.
Yeah, I use mine like,
God, we're so cute,
until it's like stupid cold where I have to turn the heat on. When it starts to dip, fireplace comes on for 10 minutes in the morning.
Yeah, just a little chilly. Yeah. Yes. I love that.
Yes.
Okay, number 9, we're going back to the HVAC. How old are the HVAC units? Most of the time, they are able to tell you how old they are. Unless that, like, data plate sticker is completely degraded and there's no way. 9 times out of 10, you will get an age out of it, even if there's not a manufacturer's date printed on there, because each company, each system has their own, like, whether it's in the serial number or what Ford numbers backwards, it's a whole thing, but you can Google it. Another thing for agents, and I'll do that too, if that's one of the things that's hardly ever filled out on our property disclosures, is how old the HVAC systems are.
Yep.
And it's not hard. If that sticker is there for you to be able to read it, it's not hard to figure out what the manufacturer's date is on that. And that's just helpful for you longevity wise. You're like, oh, it's 4 years old. Great. Should get some life out of this one. Oh my gosh, it was installed in 2019. Because we're like, oh, 2019, that's not bad.
5 years ago. I was like, what are you talking
only
about?
5 years.
5-year-old HVAC? I'm not panicking.
There was one, it was 2004. Because it was like 20 years. I'm like, oh, it's 2004. And then I'm like,
oh, wait,
oh my God.
That's the year after Alyssa graduated high school. That's a long time ago.
Oh, I was 10. See? I was worried
first
about
year of college.
I was starting 5th grade. It's okay. It's fine though. But it's not hard to figure out, and it's just important longevity wise. Though not to say that some of those older units are built like a freight train, and they continue to chug a lug along for years, which is great. And then I had clients a couple of years ago that they moved in. It was like a 4-year-old unit, and they ended up replacing the unit because it crapped out, and it was only 6 years old. But the whole like whatever electrical panel, it was going to be more expensive for them to tear it apart and fix it than it was for them to replace the
Yeah.
unit. So, but again, just kind of a
Mine crapped out 2 years, but it was because it was improperly. And the day I moved into my house, I said, this HVAC's not working right. It's not keeping up. And they're, little lady, it's just because it's hot out. You're not used to the heat in the South. And I said, well, that's weird because I used to work in HVAC. It's not keeping up. 2 years
it's
in,
not working.
I called them
Yeah.
back. They had a new service guy because that was the owner. And he was like, this wasn't installed right. Like the lines were pinched. I got a whole new,
Oh
they put
no.
in 3 units, lines and everything in one day because they kept breaking it as they installed it. So they don't service my stuff anymore. But yeah,
Oh
so
wow. Yeah, that's
yeah,
bad.
and that's why I recommend, like, especially if it's an older unit, get an HVAC company to come check it too. Like a homeowner
Mhm.
or a home inspection guy will say, okay, it's keeping up and it's old, but they won't look at it. Even if you have to pay for like a service, that's what I would do. They're usually like $100. Have them
Yep.
come service it during your inspection period because then you know, one, it's been serviced, whether or not you end up buying the house. Think of it as a nice gift for the seller, but you know, like they're looking at it, they're pulling it apart a little bit to make sure, okay, like things are working here. I don't see
Mhm.
damage, stuff like that. Um,
Well, and a lot of times if they do a service like that and they give you like their invoice, some of the bigger companies, they're like, this is guaranteed for like, because we said that it's
right.
working.
Yeah, you
So
get 90 days or
you've
whatever.
got whatever, 90. It's not a long period of time, but
Yeah, and that's when you buy a
they
home
put their stamp
warranty.
of approval on it.
Home warranty
Yes.
all the
Yes.
way. Okay, so I think
We love a
this
home
is the
warranty.
most important question, hands down.
Yes. Number 10 is the last
And I'm
one
going to
and the most
add
important.
something to 10 that's not on here.
Okay.
Um,
Go ahead.
can I call my home inspector with questions about the report? If your home inspector says no, then we're not using the home inspector because there's
Yeah,
always
you
going to
should get
be
a different home
something. Like,
inspector.
even I always meet mine at the end. Well, not always, 90% of the time, unless there's like a scheduling snafu because I had something previously booked and I can't get there. Um, I always meet them and say, okay, show me the big things. What do I need to ask for in my repair request? What's going on here? And they're
Mm-hmm.
great. And they always are like, especially for my clients, like if they can't make it because they're at work or something, have them call me if they have questions. There was one, we had a
Yep.
water issue and like the walls were showing that they were damp. And so we called and asked, we're like, what do you think? And he was like, there shouldn't be any plumbing there, but I don't know. But it was great because they could call it. Sometimes you just need a conversation versus a report.
Yep.
Um, and then,
And say, if you're an agent that's working with a home inspector that's just like, here's the report, don't call me, don't ask questions. Like,
right,
there are lots of home inspectors out there that are very good at their job. I had a client, and I only know this because I work with this inspector so much, and he told me a client from like 3 years ago called and asked where this was or something. And he was like, oh, I just pulled up the report and I looked and I was like, oh, it's this
right,
place. And I was like, that's
right.
hilarious. But still, years ago, they're still providing service to my clients.
Exactly.
So I
And
love
that's
that.
and that's when your clients will recommend them to their friends and be like, because I remember when I bought my first house, I didn't know who to hire. And my agent was
Right.
new and didn't know anyone. And I wish I had picked a different inspector now that I know what I know. But
Mm-hmm.
the other thing, and you kind of mentioned this when we were talking about how like an HVAC company might warranty their work for a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, someone's driving by. Some home inspectors will do that too. My home inspector does a 90-day warranty. If they said something was
Yep.
okay and it's not, they warranty it up to a certain amount for 90 days after the inspection was done. Um,
Yep.
and they will stand by that.
And that's super helpful if you have a buyer, or if your seller's not offering a home inspection, or not a home inspection, a home warranty for that year. That's a 90-day buffer.
Right?
That's more than
Well,
nothing.
we
So
used it once
appreciate
before we
that.
even closed on the house, and I hate to say it, they had a new young inspector um, who totally didn't look at an entire section of the house, and none of us realized it. So I called the home warranty company. I said, hey guys, looking back through this, your guy didn't even look at this section of the house. And it wasn't like it was full. It
Yep.
wasn't like he couldn't get to it. But my clients
Mm-hmm.
are really angry, and what can we do? And they stood by it. They said, nope, we warrantied it. We're sorry. Like, and I will say, I will never hire that, and like that guy from that company. I can pick which guy I want to come. I'll never pick him again.
Mm-hmm.
But he was at another one of my home inspections being retrained by that company. And so I will
Nice.
stand by that company. I won't pick him again. I have my favorite there. So
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, they're he up here, because I know which company you're talking about. Up here, they're smaller
yes.
companies. So and I don't think I'm allowed to have a very, very favorite one. But it's a husband and wife team. It's one or the
Yeah.
other, and I just adore them. And they do really, really good work and super informative, very helpful, great with clients. Like sometimes I feel like big companies, when they hire different inspectors, some of them aren't really great people,
Mm-hmm.
so when you're having that last like 15 or 20 minutes, like they're not necessarily comfortable answering the questions. They're great at their job, but they're not like
Absolutely.
as personable as you really need them to be sometimes. So I do appreciate the like down home
Yeah.
local, like super
Shout out to Frank, the home
informative people
inspector.
too.
Frank is my favorite. I love him. I'll pick him every time if I can. Um,
That's awesome. Listen, I give my clients the choice, and I'm just so happy 9 times out of 10 that we go with
right.
Outlook home inspections.
Another
Just like, that's such a good choice.
right.
Yes.
And I send them, I said, here's my favorites. Like, here's my favorite company.
Mm-hmm.
Here's, but you can choose whoever. And I always tell them why they're my favorite company. Like, they warranty it.
Yep.
They usually have great availability. They're very thorough. But another tip, I learned this at a home inspection in the mountains. The buyers bought the house in 2019. My buyers bought it in 2024. In 2019, the radon came
Mm-hmm.
back normal, came back far below the regular. And if you live in an area where you don't know what radon is, because maybe it's not everywhere, radon is a gas that lives underground that has no scent.
Colorless,
Yes.
odorless. Yeah.
Color, you get this drilled into your brain in North Carolina real estate school. It's colorless, it's odorless.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know it's there. Um, and when
And it'll
it will
kill
kill
you.
you, it will give you cancers.
Dun,
It's
dun,
awful.
dun.
But you should have your home tested every 2 years. I had no idea. No one had ever told me that. I don't think I had
No, I
my
didn't
home
know that
tested for
either.
it when I bought it because my agent didn't explain that to me. So
Mm-hmm.
if you like, because it dinged high on our inspection. And so we were like, you got to fix this. And the owner was like, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. Like, we had it inspected. It was fine when we bought it. And the radon guy was like, yeah, you really should have this checked every 2 years. I had no idea. And I was like,
That's
yeah.
crazy.
So if you live in an area where radon is a thing, get your house checked. I'm going to schedule mine
Yep.
too. So, and get a home
It's a good
inspection.
idea.
Like maybe every 5 to 10 years. I mean, how often are you really crawling around under your house to see what's going on or checking the outlet that you don't usually have something plugged into? I think it's a safety thing. Like, I don't want outlets in my house that are faulty. I have a light in my house right now that I
Mm-hmm.
know is either the bulb or there's an electrical issue and I need to get it addressed. So
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't hurt
It's a preventative
yeah.
thing, and it's not that
And
expensive.
do it
In like longevity wise versus your house burning down or doing a home
right.
inspection.
Right. And also, like, the listing I just had that went under contract in 2 days, um, we did a home inspection before we listed it because I was like, you guys need to
Yep.
know. Like, because they'd only lived in it for a year. And we caught the water filter and I think that was really it. There were some little things, but it was like, they were literally like, oh, we just haven't changed that light bulb. They're like, we don't use that room. And I was like, okay, cool. Um, yeah.
Great. Easy
So,
fix.
but yeah, get a and sometimes like my home inspection company, if you do a pre-listing one, they'll put a sign in the yard where you can pull the like buyers can pay to see a copy of the inspection and it pays my sellers back. So if you're
Yep.
on the market for a while, that's a
Super
great
cool.
idea. You're only on the market for 2 days, but
Mm-hmm.
still it was helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
But yeah, I think that's
yeah,
it
those are
for
questions to
today.
ask your home inspector. Ask about your house in general. Um, Good luck to y'all.
Yeah, and we'll see you next week. We just finished another episode of Contracts and Chaos, but believe me, the chaos does not stop here. So check out the show notes for our email address and where to follow us on socials, and we will see you next week.